Ayutthaya is a small city located a couple of hours by train north of Bangkok. It is best known for its old city, preserved in the Ayutthaya Historical Park, which is recognized internationally as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It includes a number of temples, pagodas and other remains from the Ayutthaya Kingdom. In this video I will show you how to get from Bangkok to Ayutthaya and back again by train, how to get around in Ayutthaya and what you can expect to see there in a one-day trip. But first, let's have a short recap of Ayutthaya's history. The Ayutthaya Kingdom was the center and capital of Siam from around 1350, when it gradually took over from the Sukhothai Kingdom further north. It remained the capital for several hundred years, until the Burmese invaded and destroyed much of the city in 1767, after which the capital was moved down to Bangkok. So, when starting your trip, the best way to get to the main train station in Bangkok is by metro, as the SkyTrain does not have a station there. For my trip, I got up early in the morning and waited for the metro to open at 6 o'clock. And as you can see in the bottom right corner, I will put a timestamp there in regular intervals throughout this video to make it easier for you to plan your trip. The Bangkok Metro is easy to use. After choosing the Hua Lamphong train station as your destination and paying the fare, you get a token from one of the ticket machines. You then bring this token with you, tap it on the entry gate to get in, and keep it with you to use it when you exit at your destination. Then find the train to Hua Lamphong. If you leave this early in the morning, there should not be too many people on the train. If you leave a couple of hours later though, the situation might be different during rush hour. When you arrive at Hua Lamphong metro station, you just follow the signs to the train station. The station is not that big, so it's easy to find your way. Inside the station there are many ticket booths where you can get your ticket. And you might want to check online beforehand to make sure you choose one of the faster trains, as there are many departures to Ayutthaya every day. The prices are very low, and my second class ticket was only 65 baht. So then it's off to Ayutthaya. When buying my ticket, I wasn't quite sure whether to get an air-conditioned cabin or not for my trip, but I found that if you leave early in the morning, there's really no need for air condition, as the fans in the second-class cars are more than sufficient to keep you cool. To follow the progress of my journey, I always find it useful to use Google Maps. It lets me know which places I'm passing and lets me plan ahead for the arrival at my destination. So after around 2 hours, the train arrives at Ayutthaya train station, on the eastern side of the characteristic circle of rivers surrounding most of the Ayutthaya Historical Park. If you don't want to rent the tuk-tuk right away, it is quite easy to do the first part of the temple safari on foot. From the main entrance of the train station, you just walk across the street and down the alley to the Ayutthaya train station pier. From here, a small fee will get you a ticket to the other side of the river. When you land on the other side, you can walk through the local Khao Prom market before you continue to the first temple on your list. If you haven't had breakfast yet, this is also an option for a quick meal. From the market, it's about a 1 kilometer walk to the first and nearest temple, which is Wat Mahatat, or the Temple of the Great Relic. This temple was built in the 14th century and was one of Ayutthaya's most important temples. It houses a number of great structures and Buddha images, as well as some smaller inhabitants inside the main prang. One of its most photographed objects though is the head of a stone Buddha image entwined in the roots of a banyan tree, now a well-known icon of Ayutthaya. When approaching this image, it's important to stay low, as standing over a Buddha's head is considered disrespectful. Right next to Wat Mahatat is Wat Ratchaburana, dating back to the 15th century. This Wat has a very well-preserved grand hall and main prang.
At the intersection there.
And if you dare to climb up the prang, you can visit the many smaller inhabitants inside. The view from up here is also very nice and gives you a great overview of the temple grounds. So by now you should probably get yourself a tuk-tuk, as the historical park is way too large to cover on foot, especially if you're traveling during the hot season like I did. The tuk-tuks are very convenient and the driver will wait for you while you visit the temples. The cost will be around 200 to 300 baht an hour, and if you're lucky you can also pick up some good advice from the driver on which temples to visit. The next temple on my list was Wat Praram from the 14th century. This temple looks a bit like a smaller version of Wat Ratchaburana and doesn't really add anything to that temple. It does have a nice atmosphere though, and not that many visitors. Further up the same road, you will find two major attractions next to each other. The first one being a viharn, or a preaching hall housing a 12-meter tall Buddha image made of brick and bronze. In addition, the hall houses a number of smaller Buddha images and other statues. Next to this preaching hall, you will find one of the most beautiful and also the most historically important temple in old Ayutthaya. Wat Prasi Sandpet is dominated by three large Jedis, each housing the royal relics of three Ayutthaya kings. When you drive around Ayutthaya, it's impossible not to notice the elephant riding going on in the area. I'm not sure how this works, but you are of course not encouraged to take part in any elephant riding in this country. And if you wonder why, you can just Google elephant riding in Thailand. Further west in the historical park you will find Wat Lukaya Sutta, which originally was a very large temple, but little remains after the destruction of the Burmese invasion in 1767. It is now known for its 42-meter long and 8-meter tall reclining Buddha at the front of the west edge of the temple. On the other side of the river, in the southwest corner of the park, you will find one of the most impressive temples in the city. Wat Chai Wat Hanaram was built by one of Ayutthaya's many kings in 1630 to honor his mother. The temple was built in the traditional Cambodian Khmer style, and restoration efforts starting in 1987 has transformed the temple from a looted ruin to one of the most visited attractions in the Ayutthaya Historical Park. And if you want to dress up in traditional clothing to have your picture taken, you can do that as well at this temple. So after a busy and very hot morning session, I was ready for some lunch and some tasty frog legs. There are of course a lot of restaurants in the Ayutthaya area, and the best way to find them is probably just to ask your driver. The last temple of the day wasn't really on my plan before I came here, but my tuk-tuk driver insisted, so I went along with it, and I wasn't disappointed. Wat Yai Chai Mongkol is one of the major temples in the Ayutthaya area, and both tourists and local worshippers visit this place. The temple is dominated by a huge Jedi rising from a square base surrounded by 4 smaller Jedis and a number of Buddha images. If you climb the stairs of the Jedi, you will have a perfect view over the statues and the beautiful gardens. So, although it wasn't really that late in the day, the heat had made me want to go back a little bit earlier than planned. So we headed back to the Ayutthaya train station. Fortunately, as there are many trains passing Ayutthaya each day, you never have to wait long for the next train. Not possible to choose seats though on my train back, so a bit less comfortable seats on the return, but not really a big issue. So when approaching Bangkok again, it might be a good idea to get off at the Bang Sue junction and take the subway from here, as sometimes the train is very slow when approaching the city center. So that's what I did. And a 22-minute subway ride later, I was back again, and that's the end of my day trip to Ayutthaya.